He was the king of pop, a man who could walk into any country and instantly bring traffic to a halt. His voice sold out stadiums before tickets even went on sale. His dance moves made grown men cry. His fame was so overwhelming, it became a cage. But here's the truth you were never supposed to know. At the height of his career, Michael Jackson wasn't sleeping in the finest hotels of Beverly Hills. He wasn't surrounded by velvet-lined pillows in Neverland. Instead, Michael Jackson, the most famous entertainer in human history, was curled up on the floor of another man's home. That man was Barry Gibb, the last surviving Bee Gee. Imagine it, the two biggest icons of their generations, one from disco, the other from pop, locked away in a Miami house. Nights of wine, whispered confessions, guitars echoing through the rooms, and sometimes, when the night dragged on too long, Michael would simply collapse on the carpet and fall asleep. Why was the king of pop hiding here? What secrets did he reveal in those nights? And why did Barry Gibb, of all people, become his unlikely refuge? This is the untold story of Michael Jackson's secret escape, a story of loneliness, paranoia, and the strange cost of living in the spotlight. And once you hear it, you'll never listen to their music the same way again. Welcome to RetroWaves, the home of music's untold stories. If you grew up with the Bee Gees spinning on your record player, if you remember the first time you tried to moonwalk after watching Michael Jackson on TV, or if you simply crave the hidden truths behind music's biggest legends, then you're in the right place, because today, we're peeling back the curtain on a friendship that almost no one knew existed. So grab a seat and get ready to be pulled into a world of fame, secrecy, and nights that changed music history forever. Michael Joseph Jackson was born on August 29, 1958, in the industrial city of Gary, Indiana. His childhood home had 2 bedrooms. His father, Joe Jackson, ruled the house with a strict, almost military discipline. From the very beginning, Michael wasn't like other kids. He didn't spend his afternoons running through the streets with friends or riding bikes through the neighborhood. His afternoons were spent in front of a mirror, rehearsing choreography until his feet blistered. By age 5, he was already the lead singer of the Jackson 5. His brothers performed beside him, but everyone in the room could see the truth. Michael was the star. By 11, he was topping the Billboard charts. By 14, he was already a seasoned performer. And by 21, when most young men are figuring out their futures, Michael Jackson was the most famous young man in America. But with fame came sacrifice. He later admitted he would watch other children through the windows of his limousine, wishing he could just step outside and play. His childhood had been traded away for stardom. When Thriller dropped in 1982, it wasn't just a hit album, it was a cultural earthquake. 66 million copies sold, 7 top 10 singles, music videos that changed the medium forever. Michael didn't just break records, he obliterated them. But success came with a darker side. Michael was no longer just a man. He was a brand, a business, a product. He couldn't walk through a shopping mall, he couldn't eat in a restaurant, he couldn't even trust his own circle without wondering who was leaking stories to the press. He once said, "The bigger the star, the bigger the target," and Michael Jackson had the biggest target on his back in the entire world. Then came the rumors. Some tabloids claimed Michael would spend hours talking to mannequins in his home because he had no one else to confide in. Others swore he wore elaborate disguises, fake beards, prosthetic noses, just to walk down the street without being recognized. Another persistent rumor that Michael once rented out an entire supermarket, hiring actors to pretend to shop alongside him, just so he could feel normal for a few hours. Were these stories true? Some were confirmed, some were exaggerated, some were pure invention. But they all painted the same picture. Michael Jackson was desperately lonely, and by the early 2000s, when legal troubles piled up and the tabloids sharpened their knives, Michael's loneliness turned into fear. Fear of betrayal, fear of the world outside, fear that even his own friends couldn't be trusted. That's when he made a phone call that would change everything. Not to a lawyer, not to his family, but to Barry Gibb. Barry Allen Crompton Gibb was born in 1946, the eldest of 5 children. While Michael grew up in Indiana, Barry grew up in the Isle of Man, and later Manchester, England. But like Michael, his life was shaped by music before he ever understood what it meant. By age 9, Barry was writing songs. By 12, he was performing with his younger brothers Robin and Morris. Together they formed the Bee Gees. When the family emigrated to Australia in the late 1950s, the brothers brought their harmonies to small stages. By the mid-1960s, they had returned to England and the world was about to notice them. Songs like Massachusetts and To Love Somebody proved they were more than just another pop act. Their harmonies were haunting, their melodies unforgettable. And then came Saturday Night Fever in 1977. With it, the Bee Gees didn't just top the charts, they defined a cultural era. White suits, disco balls, John Travolta's strut, all of it backed by the falsetto of Barry Gibb. But like Michael, the Bee Gees' success came with backlash. By the 1980s, the disco movement was under attack. In Chicago, a disco demolition night literally ended with fans burning Bee Gees records in protest. For Barry, it was a brutal reminder: the world can love you one moment and turn on you the next. And Barry knew tragedy on a deeper level too. He had already lived through the deaths of his brothers. First Andy, the youngest Gibb, whose career burned bright but ended tragically young, and later Morris, his twin brother Robin's musical partner. Barry was the eldest, the protector, the survivor. So when Michael Jackson came to him, not as a superstar, but as a frightened man, Barry recognized the same pain. The first time Michael and Barry crossed paths was in the 1970s, when both were carving out their dominance in pop culture. Michael admired Barry's songwriting, how the Bee Gees could craft melodies that lived in people's heads forever. Barry admired Michael's voice, the way he could take a simple lyric and turn it into a global anthem. They weren't best friends yet, but they respected each other. They were two men at the top of mountains only a handful of others could ever understand. By the late 1990s and early 2000s, when Michael was facing the most intense scrutiny of his life, he needed somewhere to hide. Neverland was swarmed with press. Hotels were impossible. Even family visits leaked to tabloids within hours. But Miami was different. Barry Gibb lived there quietly, far from Los Angeles and far from the spotlight. Barry had money, influence, and privacy, but more importantly, he had empathy. So when Michael asked if he could stay, Barry said yes. And just like that, two of the most famous men on earth became housemates. But what happened inside that Miami home was nothing like the world outside imagined. Barry Gibb's Miami home wasn't a palace compared to Neverland. It wasn't filled with amusement parks, giraffes, or movie theaters. It was just a home, a family home. And maybe that's why Michael Jackson loved it. He arrived quietly, without fanfare, slipping into Barry's house like a man running from shadows. No paparazzi knew, no headlines leaked. This wasn't Michael Jackson, the king of pop. This was Michael Jackson, the man, a man desperate for refuge. Barry recalled that Michael would stay upstairs in one of the spare rooms. He didn't want luxury hotels or rented mansions. He wanted privacy, invisibility. At night, when the house fell quiet, the two men would sit together in the music room. A bottle of wine would sit on the table, guitars leaned against the walls, and slowly the mask of Michael Jackson's superstar would slip away. Barry later revealed, "We would just sit around and write and get drunk." Michael liked wine. There were a few nights when he just went to sleep on the floor. The image is almost impossible to believe. Michael Jackson, a man worth hundreds of millions, a man who could summon limousines with a phone call, lying on the carpet of Barry Gibb's house, asleep like a tired child after a long day. It wasn't about comfort, it was about safety. The floor didn't judge him, the floor didn't demand an autograph, the floor was real. Some nights, Barry said, Michael would talk for hours about music, about life, about loneliness. He would strum a few chords, then break off mid-song, his mind clearly wandering elsewhere. And sometimes he would just sit in silence, lost in thought, staring at nothing. Of course, where Michael Jackson went, rumors followed, and his secret stays in Miami were no different. Some insiders, never confirmed, whispered that Michael could be demanding, even in Barry's home, that he wanted the room arranged in a certain way, or that he would request midnight meals and elaborate accommodations. One rumor claimed Michael and Barry had creative disagreements, that Michael, ever the perfectionist, wanted to push their songwriting sessions late into the night, while Barry, a father with children still in school, needed to keep his mornings sane. Another rumor suggested that Michael was restless even in hiding, pacing through the house at odd hours, unable to sleep, sometimes still dressed as though he were about to walk on stage. Barry himself never confirmed any of these whispers. He kept his memories private, dignified, but even his own words hinted at the truth. Michael never truly relaxed. Even in exile, he was haunted by the weight of being Michael Jackson. Barry admitted, "Michael never knew who his friends were. He didn't trust many people. But in my home, I tried to make him feel safe." And yet, even Barry, the eternal protector, the oldest Gibb brother, eventually felt the strain. Another unverified story claims that Barry's wife, Linda, once asked, "How long is he staying here?" Not out of unkindness, but out of exhaustion. Hosting Michael Jackson wasn't like hosting a regular guest. His presence was both a blessing and a burden. Eventually, Barry had to be honest. As much as he loved Michael, as much as he wanted to protect him, life couldn't stop forever. He still had a family to raise. And Michael, he understood. He always understood. From those nights of quiet exile, something remarkable emerged, a song. In 2002, Michael and Barry co-wrote and recorded All in Your Name. On the surface, it was a political statement, a protest against the looming war in Iraq. Michael's voice, tender and pleading, layered over Barry's harmonies, carried a message of peace. "I'm sending out a message to the people. We gotta stop it all." But to those who knew the context, the song felt like something else. It wasn't just about politics. It was about Michael's heart. It was about two men sitting in a Miami living room, drinking wine, strumming guitars, trying to make sense of a world that no longer made sense. When the song was finally released in 2011, 2 years after Michael's death, Barry described it as a gift. He said, "It was Michael's idea. He came to my house, we wrote a song, and we did it together. He was my friend, and that's how I want people to remember him." But listen closely to the track, and you can almost hear the exhaustion in Michael's voice. The vulnerability, the plea. It wasn't just a song for the world, it was a song for himself. But as beautiful as those nights were, they couldn't last. By 2003, Michael was back under the world's harshest spotlight. Accusations, lawsuits, trials. His name wasn't in the headlines for music anymore, it was for scandal. Barry said he never spoke about the trial with Michael. He refused. Out of respect, out of friendship. Michael didn't need a judge in his friend's living room. He needed silence. He needed refuge. But as the trial drew closer, Michael's visits became fewer. The pressure of the outside world was too strong. Even Barry's home couldn't shield him forever, and in those final visits, there was an unspoken truth between them. Michael Jackson wasn't escaping forever, he was only borrowing time. As the mid-2000s arrived, Michael Jackson's world collapsed in ways no human being could bear. The trial consumed him. Every word he spoke, every move he made, was dissected on international television. The same media that once crowned him the king of pop now treated him like a spectacle, not a man, not an artist, but a headline. And quietly, the visits to Barry's Miami home stopped. It wasn't because their friendship had soured. It wasn't because Barry turned him away. It was simply reality. Michael's life could no longer fit inside anyone else's home. His problems were too big, his name too loud, his presence too disruptive. One rumor, never proven, claimed that Michael wanted to move in permanently, that he felt safer in Barry's house than anywhere else. But Barry, a husband and father, couldn't allow that kind of chaos to swallow his family's life. Another rumor suggested Michael confessed secrets to Barry about the music industry, about betrayals by other stars, about how executives controlled him, about the paranoia that followed him everywhere. But Barry never confirmed those whispers. He kept his friend's dignity intact. What we do know is this: Barry Gibb gave Michael Jackson something no one else could, a place without cameras, a place where he could sit on the floor, drink wine, and just exist. And when Michael left for the last time, he carried that memory with him, a memory of being human again, if only for a few nights. To understand why those nights mattered, you have to understand what fame does to a soul. Michael Jackson wasn't just famous, he was too famous. His face was a brand, his body was an economy. His very existence generated billions of dollars for people who would never know him, never love him, never care if he was happy. That kind of fame destroys trust. Everyone wants something, everyone takes, no one gives. Barry Gibb understood this. He'd lived it too, though on a smaller scale. The Bee Gees had known adoration, then ridicule, then resurrection. Barry had seen his younger brothers destroyed by the weight of the spotlight. Andy, the youngest, dead at just 30. Morris gone in 2003, Robin years later. Barry survived, but survival came with scars. So when Michael walked into Barry's home, Barry didn't see a superstar. He saw a man drowning in the same ocean he'd been treading his whole life. That's why their bond was real. Because behind the music, behind the fame, behind the headlines, they both knew the same truth. The higher you rise, the lonelier it gets. On June 25, 2009, the news broke. Michael Jackson was dead at just 50 years old. The world cried. Fans poured into the streets. Candlelight vigils appeared overnight. The same media that had hounded him in life now mourned him in death. And Barry Gibb, he went silent. When he finally spoke, his words weren't about scandals or trials. They weren't about fame. They were about friendship. Barry said, he would come to Miami. He would stay at my house. We would write songs. We would drink wine. He was my friend. And that's how I want people to remember him. And then he paused, as if even now, years later, he couldn't quite believe it himself, that Michael Jackson had once been upstairs in his home, hiding from the world, seeking shelter on his floor. As of today, Barry Gibb is the last surviving BG. He has outlived them all. Andy, Morris, Robin, he has outlived Michael Jackson, and in his eyes, you can see the cost. When Barry performs, when he speaks about his past, it isn't just nostalgia, it's grief. It's the weight of knowing he's the last voice left from an era that shaped the world. For Barry, Michael wasn't just a collaborator. He was proof that even the greatest, the brightest, the most legendary among us need a friend. And for Michael, Barry was that friend, the one who asked for nothing, the one who never betrayed him, the one who let him be human, if only for a moment. Their song, All in Your Name, still exists. You can hear it today, and if you close your eyes, you can almost imagine them, two men in a Miami living room, strumming guitars, sipping wine, escaping fame together. So the next time you hear Thriller, remember this: the king of pop once slept on the floor of Barry Gibb's home, not because he had to, but because it was the only place he felt safe. And the next time you hear Stayin' Alive, remember this: Barry Gibb, the last BG, once opened his door to the most famous man on earth and gave him something more valuable than money, more powerful than fame. He gave him peace. Two legends, two lives, two men bound by the strange, suffocating weight of stardom. And in the end, maybe that's the greatest legacy they left behind. That even the brightest stars need somewhere to hide in the dark. If this story moved you, if it made you see Michael Jackson or Barry Gibb in a new light, then subscribe to RetroWaves, because music history isn't just about the songs that top the charts. It's about the secrets, the struggles, and the friendships we almost never got to see.